Welcome back to another TERF Talk Down Under. I'm Stassja and this is Ange.
Hey.
Hi, Ange.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, good. And it is Gender Critical Coming Out Day today. I'm clearly already out. How did you come out?
I came out with thanks to our last week's guest, Bronwyn Winter. She appeared on that debate that I accidentally caught on television. And she was basically saying everything that I already thought, because my father-in-law had just come out 6 months previously at the age of 65 and left a trail of, family dysfunction and, stole all the family's money. And, my mother-in-law got gravely ill and eventually died. And he's, sort of harmed all of his children and grandchildren. My daughter hasn't seen her grandfather. And so I was already like seething at this idea that any old man, not even, someone from an early age, but any man at any time in their life could say, I'm a woman, and it would just be accepted. Now, he went off and got, $100,000 worth of surgery and this sort of stuff. And we don't know how he paid for it, but there was talk that Medicare covered part of it. So I was already seething. And then, Bronwyn turns up on the TV reading my mind. And I'd just come out of like an ugly, not ugly, but, a marriage breakdown. And I was feeling sort of a bit disconnected. And I realized that I'd kind of been led astray from my feminist roots. And I thought, I want to be political again, because this trans issue, it stinks. And so I sought out the Aussie Radfems on Facebook, and the rest is history. So, and I've been out the whole time that this argument's been going out online. I've only been on Twitter, though, for less than 2 years, because I had an account and I had to shut it down because of stalkers over another issue. And then I re-engaged on Twitter about 18 months ago, and because I only post about this issue, it just went, So, I had no choice about being out. I'm out. That's it.
Yeah. Mine was what did I do? I did just on Facebook. I just made a post with Bender from Futurama, the gender Bender, and he's wearing like a pink tutu. Yeah. I posted that, and I got a little bit of pushback from some dude I met once up near Byron Bay. He came in to school me on why I was wrong and how I was being a TERF. And then this old housemate jumped in and started defending this dude and said something like, oh, it's really complicated. It's like, no, it's not fucking complicated. They're blokes. They don't belong in women's sport. So I went with the sports issue. And, that was how I came out. Yeah.
And didn't you have an ex that liked women's undies as well?
Yeah. That was before I was aware of autogynephilia. But I was only with him 3 months, and he revealed a few revealing things to me. But what really got me with him was I could see that he was a poor me covert narcissist. So much of his behavior was based around feel sorry for me, nothing's my fault, it's my mum's fault because she put me on ADHD medication when I was 10 years old, which it's
always women's fault.
So that woke me up.
See, I've always had when I was young, I used to be a bit of a goth, and so I've always had gender non-conforming partners. And I remember I went out with this punk guy who used to wear dresses, but he wore them ironically like Kurt Cobain did. And it wasn't that he thought himself a woman. He just liked wearing a dress because people would laugh at him, and because he was such a brute, like 6 foot something, brute, that he looked absolutely ridiculous. And he did it for attention, basically. And I thought it was really funny. And we used to both get around in with Robert Smith hair and in band t-shirts and Dr. Martens in very androgynous attire. And occasionally we were mistaken, well, I was mistaken for being a boy and things like that, but it was no big deal. And now, God, you do that once and you're on the trans train. It's just insane.
Yeah, and that Kurt Cobain, how they all the trans actors reckon he's trans. Give me a break.
That is insane.
I wish Dave Grohl would bloody come out and say something.
Yeah. Oh, they're all cowards. They're all cowards. No one's going to stand up and say anything because they're all scared of the pushback.
Yeah. What's been happening on Twitter? Has there been much gender critical coming out going on?
I haven't really paid much attention to it because I had a bad falafel and I thought I had COVID, so I've been a bit crook. But I did pop on there for a bit. There'll be people watching that and laughing. I did pop on there for a bit, and there's a few people have come out, but most people are worried about their employment and being doxxed, and with good reason. Earlier today, I was chatting to our own Kath Daves, and as her profile in the media is getting bigger, and the profile of Save Women's Sports due to the Olympics, she's becoming more of a target of trans activists. And one basement dwelling weirdo trans person with no in real life friends wields a lot of power currently. And so they're writing letters and ringing up workplaces, and they're contacting agencies she's involved with, and they're basically trying to dox her into silence. And because of the media climate, we are all concerned because I posted something the other day about how we haven't really been represented until recently here in Australia. Like, we're behind the UK as far as the pushback against this ideology. And so the trans activists are aware of what's happening in the UK and in some degrees in some states in the US. And they're sort of panicking because they're thinking, geez, these TERFs are getting a bit big for their boots. They're starting to appear in the media. They've got their YouTube channels. They've got their Twitter accounts that are getting more and more followers. It's like, hang on, so they're desperate and they're trying to cancel us. So this coming out day has exposed how dangerous it is to be a gender critical woman. The
mind boggles. Can't believe we're here. Speaking of Kath Daves, she's been in the news a bit this week. She's spoken about that, what's his name, Leah, the swimmer, the male swimmer in Pennsylvania that won a long distance swimming race by 38 seconds, was it?
Did you watch it? I watched it. It was infuriating.
Couldn't bring myself to do it.
It was infuriating. I recommend people Google it because it will just blow your mind.
So she's been speaking about that, but at the same time, that organisation Binary Australia, they actually paid for an independent poll to be taken to find out what Australians think about males in women's sport. Now, I wrote down the results. Overall, 67% of Australians think that males shouldn't be in women's sport. I'm a bit disappointed.
I thought it would be more.
You'd want it to be in the 90s, really. But then they did a bit of a breakdown. The Nationals, 79% are on our side. The Liberals, 78%. One Nation, 81%. And then, I know. And then when it came to the question of should there be legal protections for women's sport, even amongst Labor and the Greens, the majority said yes, there should be. So 75% of Labor voters and even 55% of Greens voters think we need some legislation around this. So it must be really weird being a Greens party member and sitting in meetings, witnessing this insanity going on, And meanwhile, the majority of them are probably thinking, no, this is out there. This is crazy. We shouldn't be doing this. Speak up, Greenies.
Yeah, speak up.
Yep.
I used to vote for the Greens. No more.
Yeah.
No. Won't even vote Labor. I've been a Labor voter nearly all my life and occasionally straight over to the Greens, and I won't vote for either of them now. I'm politically homeless like a lot of feminists.
Yep. I will probably vote Liberal for the first time ever.
Wow. I don't know if I can do that.
I know a lot of women are just probably going to do a, empty ballot paper.
The thing that I liked about the binary survey is that it was independent. And one of the barriers that we face is the trans orgs have all these navel gazing surveys and things where they're only, they're interviewing 100 trans people for their results, and binary I'm not on their same page as them politically, so they were very smart that they made sure it was independent, so there's not that comeback where people will say that's a biased sample because that's your political view. They were actually very smart to pay for an independent survey, and I think that's something that we have to all consider. Because that is more representative of reality than your focus group, and all the legislation around this trans stuff like self-ID has all been passed by consulting trans orgs. They haven't done an independent review of any of these things, either the unisex toilets or the things at the children's hospital. Any of this stuff, it's all been navel gazing within their own organizations rather than independent. So for us, it's important for us to get out there and have independent stuff. However, that does come at a financial cost, and I think as feminists we're going to have to or not feminists but as gender critical people, we're going to have to seriously think about how we're going to fund some of this pushback, because the UK have been very, very good at crowdfunding for legal action and crowdfunding for protests and political stuff. And here in Australia, we're so fragmented by distance and also by apathy, because a lot of people are happy to be keyboard warriors and they're happy to troll people on social media or argue or whatever. But extend that to real life, either by making a $5 financial donation or by writing a letter, seems to be too much for a lot of people. So we really do need to come together and do as much as we can to create, not just, a sort of a right-wing platform that we're sort of sitting on, because a lot of us aren't right-wingers, but, to have our own platform as politically independent group that is worried about this stuff.
Yeah, it is expensive. A small group within the Coalition for Biological Reality had a look at doing an opinion poll and paying like Gallup or someone like that to do it, and it was around $15,000.
What?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So we kind of put that on the shelf for somewhere down the track.
Yeah.
But I'd like to get out there on the street with a camera and just ask really obvious questions like, do you think that male rapists that identify as women should be put in women's prisons, and just gauge the reaction from the general public? I think that'd be fun.
Let's do it.
Yeah, cool.
Let's do it. I'll come. Yeah. And I'll we'll have to have someone big with us.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should do it. I think that'd be fun. And then we just upload it to here, upload it to YouTube or somewhere like that, and then refer it on to a few journos. Because I think if the journalists are aware that enough people are talking about this stuff, then they will publish things. Like we're already seeing a little tiny indentation where gender critical views are starting to be represented, a bit biased, like your contribution last week on the ABC. Like they're kind of cornering you and not telling the full story, but that's better than having zero platform, because prior to now we had zero.
Yeah. And also there was a small win. I think a number of people complained to the ABC that they had used the word TERF.
Excellent.
In one of their when they uploaded, I think it was in the interview with the Hobart Lord Mayor, they used the word TERF in there. And so some women complained, and one of them actually got a response back saying, "Oh, we apologise," and they've changed the headline on that. So it just shows, yeah. But it just shows that write the letters, write the emails, make the complaints. It does have an impact, or can have an impact. Yeah,
it does. It definitely does. Yeah.
So that what else happened in the news? Edie Wyatt, she's an Australian writer. She got an article in, oh God, I can't remember which publication it was now. It might have been the Spectator. Sorry. But she got an article published about what happened with Hobart City Council and the Gender Identity in Law Forum. So that was good. She did a really good job of it, I thought. Yeah. So the forum is going ahead. I'm helping with organising that. Unfortunately, Sel Grover can't travel at the moment, so she's no longer going to be chairperson for
that's a shame.
that. Yeah. So we're trying to get a Tasmanian woman who used to work for the ABC to do it, but her initial reaction was gulp. In a message, she's wrote gulp.
So she'd like to, but she's worried that she'll be targeted. Is that what gulp means? Or she doesn't like getting up on stage?
I think she's a bit nervous because it probably is going to be a bit heated. I mean, it's open. We've said everyone is welcome to come. We don't mind if trans activists come, as long as they behave themselves and don't disrupt it.
They won't.
They'll disrupt it.
They will disrupt. They'll come to disrupt.
So whoever's chairperson is going to need to be a little bit authoritarian, put them in their place. We do have to hire private security. So if anyone does get disruptive, we're just going to get security onto them and get them booted. Which reminds me, Jessica Hoyle, did you watch her video?
No, I didn't.
So Jessica runs LGB Tasmania.
Yep.
She's the woman that tried for a lesbian only event.
Lesbian only event. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Got denied. So she's gone into Target in Launceston, Tasmania.
Oh, I saw half of that. Yes. Oh no.
She's got her LGB Tasmania hoodie on and an LGB Tasmania cap. And I've had a chat with her. So she said she reckons she was just standing having a conversation with a couple of women, young women that approached her and were very supportive of her work and what she was doing on her side, gender critical. And this store employee, a female wearing a they them badge, comes up and starts having a go at her.
That's bad.
It really is. And told her to get out of the store and asked her to leave. So Jess is making all sorts of complaints. We'll see how far that goes. Because really, I've said it to her, it's discrimination based on your sexual orientation, and it's also discrimination based on your political belief, which is protected in Tasmania. So,
did you see a few weeks ago, some poor guy was walking through an airport with an LGB Alliance bag, and then that Twitter tried to dox him and shame him and like just ruin his life because he had LGB Alliance written on his bag. Now, even 5 years ago, that would be considered horrendous homophobia by the left.
That's right.
And now look at them, they're like rabid dogs.
It's
being gay and a lesbian or bisexual and is a crime almost, it's just horrendous. And how is being proud of your own sexuality an offence to trans activists. I don't understand the logic between attacking people who, you know, want to be exclusively gay or exclusively lesbian. I don't understand the logic of attacking them in the name of LGBTQ rights. I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, we've got a guest has just joined the waiting room.
Yeah.
We have.
Oh yeah, this is a good guest.
I'll just bring her in. We've got Dr. Holly Lawford-Smith joining us. She's had, I think, a win, a loss, and a draw this week. Hi, Holly. How you going?
Good. How are you guys?
Yeah, good. I was just saying, it's like you've had a win, a loss, and a draw this week. You got a good article into the Spectator. That was a win. You had an article pulled from OG magazine. That was a loss.
Yeah.
And then the debate that was meant to go ahead didn't happen. So that's
I reckon. That was disappointing.
That was really disappointing. I felt like we did a good job of getting the word out on that. Like there was a lot of, we managed to spread the message to people in that way, and there seemed to be quite a bit of interest. So it was a shame. We might not be able to repeat that.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
So what article did you get pulled, Holly?
I should have predicted it, really. So it was for a magazine, ONG magazine, which is obstetrics and gynecology. They had a sort of special issue, or I think every issue is around a theme, and this theme was language. So I'd been invited to write a piece on, the protection of women-centered language in that field. And so I wrote a piece called Those Birthing People, They're Women. And actually, I thought I was kind of moderate in that piece, given how one could argue. I just tried to make the point that you can kind of be inclusive of non-binary people or female people who don't identify as women without losing women-centered language. You just do it with an and, right? So like women and non-binary people, whatever. And then I also tried to say in the very last paragraph of the piece, don't let this issue be hijacked by the question of whether trans women are women, because that's peripheral. Whether you think they are or they aren't, almost no feminist issue applies to every single woman on the planet. So it's just beside the point whether trans women are women. Like, don't worry about that. Keep your women-centered language. Don't risk going back to the default male, and just use an and to be inclusive if you must be. So I thought that was like a pretty reasonable, not hardline message. Nonetheless, apparently at least one person complained.
It's so unfair.
Did they give you any warning that they were taking it down, or?
No, and that's always the thing with this kind of deplatforming or cancelling. It's like there's no respect in the process toward the author or the speaker, or, like I had to be told by someone who couldn't use the link. I think Millie Hill had kindly shared the article on her Twitter, and maybe one of her followers had just tried to read it and not been able to find the article. So that's kind of how I heard. And I contacted the editor to say, what's going on? Are you deplatforming me? She said they've had a few complaints and they wanted to take it down while they assess the situation. So I think it was like a knee jerk. We take it down and then we work out what to do. But I've heard nothing since then. And I wrote to ask, it had been a week or whatever, maybe a bit less. I wrote to ask and I didn't hear back. So I'm not very hopeful that they're going to be putting it back up.
Yeah.
That's so disrespectful. That is so disrespectful.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like you spend the time, right? Like I research the article and I write the article. It's like, at least the least you could do is just tell me to my face why you're taking it down and what you think the problem was.
It's targeted harassment though, because it's the same group of people that are targeting all of the public TERFs, it's so obvious that there's a little core group of trans activists who do this stuff, and it's so frustrating to me that hasn't been exposed. They're anonymous, and they shouldn't be, but we all know who they are, but their anonymity is maintained.
Yeah.
And that perpetuates it. They go on to the next person and the next article and the next TV appearance. It's awful.
Yeah, and they can make it look like there's a large group of mobilized activists when there's actually just 3 of them.
Yeah.
Angry men
In their
behind
basement.
the computers.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that like tripped me up on this was that if she was telling the truth, she said some of our members have complained, which means that's people in the I don't actually know what RANZCOG stands for. I guess Royal Australia New Zealand Obstetrics and Gynecology, probably. Yeah. Right. So that would mean there are like people working in those fields that are members of that professional association. But then of course there's going to be activists everywhere. But that probably isn't then, if that's right, just those 3 guys, right? It'll be like some probably very woke
non-binaries.
Yeah, or like a woman who really feels like she's being an ally or something.
Yeah. It really boggles my mind that, you know, an obstetrics and gynecology organization and magazine have swallowed this, and that it really blows my mind what happened to Millie Hill when she nearly got deplatformed. How has the birthing world been overtaken by this? It just
I know.
And breastfeeding as well. Australian Breastfeeding Association have gone fully woke, but it only takes a handful of people, and the activists get on the committees and then they speak for everybody else. Yeah. So, you know, it's not really this massive amount of trans activists, it's just this small core group.
Yeah, and people are
all it takes though.
Stand up, aren't they? Because if you're in the committee, someone's being really pushy about something, you don't really want to have a fight, you can't really be bothered, you don't want to fall out with your colleagues. Easier just to go along, and then everything is captured. It's shit. Yeah.
And you had some good news this week, Holly. I believe you're traveling to the UK at some point as I can't remember the term, visiting professor or something.
Oh, yeah, it's just like a affiliation. So I guess it's like it's good for Reading, but it doesn't have an official. Sorry, I'm saying that because I got an anxious email from someone. I was like, "Are you still going to be doing these things next year?" Yeah, it's just like an affiliation for now, and then it means if I go over, we'll do conferences, or I might give some lectures or whatever. But I'm not disappearing anytime soon. It's just like a relationship, like this guy and me are now dating a little bit, but in a university sense.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, it was announced, right? Like Rosa Friedman at University of Reading, like, and I was so pleased to have Holly. But yeah, it's just like I'm listed on there visiting academics, and I'll probably go and hang out for a bit sometimes in the next 3 years. But it's not. I'm definitely not going. I won't be gone.
Well, Melbourne needs you. You're our most high profile public TERF, so we need you here. You can't leave us. But it's a great experience for you, you know.
Yeah, no, actually, I didn't say it in those terms, but there was the same person. There's a sort of scheme where you can do a 5-year visiting professorship.
Wow.
And I was kind of considering trying to put in a bid for a big project on pornography. But then I had the same sense, right, that like we're in a pretty difficult time at the start of our fight, right, and everyone is needed. And so running away to a country for 5 years that has made enormous progress, it just didn't really seem like the right thing to do. So
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I want to stay. Yeah.
And tell us about the debate that didn't happen. How did that come about, and who was involved, and how did they find you for that?
Yeah, that was kind of amazing. I think the Speak Up for Women New Zealand group have been trying to get that to happen for a long time. And I guess all across our movement, right, everyone wants a debate, and every now and then there'll be the possibility of one. Like I haven't heard anything lately. You guys probably heard more than me, but you know, Grace Lavery and Helen Joyce were supposed to have formally agreed to one, right? And Tortoise Media is supposed to be hosting, and I haven't heard anything about that for a while, so I don't know if it's going ahead, but you know, periodically there'll be some possibility of it, and then it will fall through for various reasons. So we were quite excited. I think Speak Up for Women New Zealand had found a person who was keen to host and who has done controversial debates before. This is the guy from Elephant TV. I don't know if you know it. He has a YouTube channel and a Facebook page, and he did one on the hate speech and free speech laws recently, which was really great. Yeah, so he was up for hosting it, and then I think they'd approached a few different people, and then this Lexi Matheson had agreed, which, you know, it's always hard because often on that side together, like a no debate principle, right? So it's hard to get anyone to agree. So that was exciting. Yeah, and then unfortunately, just I think the day before, maybe, she said she was sick, and maybe it was COVID. She'd had a COVID test. So we're like, fingers crossed that's just a postponing, and we'll be doing it soon. But I guess we'll see if she gets back in touch. And then I think the host is still keen, and I'm still keen, and we've all done the prep. So we'll just see, right, whether that was an excuse or not, I guess.
So just for some practice, how would you respond to the accusation that radical feminists are just reducing people down to their genitals?
Radical feminists are reducing, right? Is this supposed to be the biological determinism? I think there's so much myths in this debate. But I take it what people mean by that is that to be a man or a woman, personality is dictated by your genitals, right? So it's the determinism of being born with a vulva and then growing up to be feminine and submissive and whatever. And then they're saying that's reductive because, of course, a vulva person can grow up to be an astronaut, and a penis person can grow up to be decorative and frilly. Right? Like that's something like the claim. And it's stupid, right? Because the radical feminist whole point is stop putting people into roles based on their genitals. And it's not freedom, right? Just to say that we should let people swap boxes if they absolutely want to, right? Like it's not freedom to say the penis person can be a submissive housewife and the vulva person can be an astronaut if they really want to declare themselves trans and go on a journey, right? That's not like liberating. It's like kind of interesting in this debate how close the positions sometimes get. Like I just read the brief from I don't know if you saw this. The All About Women festival. Okay. This non-binary female person who I think calls herself transmasculine. I'm not keeping up, but I think the labels change. Anyway, she's supposed to be hosting this session on Beyond the Binary, of course. That's what the All About Women festival should be talking about. But what was interesting is that the blurb is so similar, like almost gets it, because it's like, what would a world be like without gender socialization, and where we just treated people as fully human, right? So you read and you're like, oh my God, like you almost get it, like you're so close. So I think that's quite interesting. Like sometimes maybe what the warring sides want is not that different, but somehow I don't know what exactly we disagree on, exactly the level of ambition or how. I think
we disagree on the same-sex space, on the single-sex spaces. I think that's the primary disagreement. The fact that they don't respect women's boundaries. I mean, I don't think any of us really care if they dress like us or, you know, want to. You know, it's when they start taking our places and coming into our spaces that we care. And when they start grooming kids, which all of them do now, you know, a couple of years ago, there was a big difference between the adult trans and their demands and the grooming of children. And that's all come together through the media to be the same thing. You know, you're either pro-trans right from birth to whatever, or you're against it. And I don't know how that's come together except for, you know, savvy marketing through the media. And that's where the Radfems are all freaking out going,
That's true. There's a very different approach to children, right? Because the Radfem approach would just be like, let kids be kids, right? Don't impose gender on them, just let them express themselves how they want to. And you would absolutely never do something so regressive as like, oh, she likes skateboarding, so she must be a boy. That's anathema, right? But but it's kind of interesting. I don't know, I guess it's just academically interesting. Like, even though the methods differ a lot, do they have roughly the same end goal in mind? Like in 50 years, would the world the trans activists want be roughly?
Mm.
Same,
No,
or
I
would it be
think
binary?
I think they'd want to crush women. I think we'd be reduced to surrogates and sex workers and maids, and that's about it. If
And
they
there'd
got
just
their
be a
way,
few men in there as well, along with us, masquerading.
possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a couple of gay men.
But then the
But
non-binary, where are the non, you know what I mean? Like, there's
Yeah.
the whole non-binary, and then what are they aiming for with that? That does seem more like trying to break free of the binary. So it's like they sort of get it, but I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. There's heaps of misogyny. There's heaps of really bad treatment of children. Yeah, I guess I just get curious sometimes. Is it like we have the same sort of goal, but they're just like way ham-fisted about how to achieve it, or do we actually radically disagree on the goals? I don't know.
I do get the distinct impression that, yes, they're trying to transcend gender roles,
Yeah.
but they're doing it in this really weird way where, like, if you're a male and you don't conform to masculine stereotypes, then either you need to alter your body or declare yourself non-binary.
Yeah.
Whereas, second wave feminism was, let's be women that go beyond the binary.
Yeah.
Let's encourage men to express their feelings, blah, blah, blah. It just denies the fact that you have a body. This is what I see. Yeah.
No, I agree, but there's a sense in which they could just be like two routes to the same conclusion, right? Because if you just get everyone to say that they're not a man and not a woman, like everyone almost, because any variation, like any personality, anything, okay, welcome to the club, you're non-binary as well. But then the whole world is non-binary or trans. Okay, so we can do away with those labels now. And then it's like a weird, long, medicalized, woman-harming route to the conclusion where we're all just humans.
Yeah.
So there's this like weird story you can tell where it's kind of that we want the same stuff, but their way is just horrifically trampling on women and children and gay people along the way, but we kind of have the same goal. I don't know if I'm right, by the way. I'm just like Sunday afternoon philosophizing. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just,
this is why we need this debate, because what I find is that the other side is reluctant to flesh out the argument. We just want to live. We just want to not be harassed or whatever, but we don't get any of this, what exactly is your goal?
Yeah.
Because I'm afraid that they're going to say it's it's something horrible, like to rape all the women or something like that. Because going by some of the things I see on Twitter, there's a lot of these, particularly the AGPs, want some pretty dodgy things. So I think part of their reluctance to speak out is because they don't have a clear argument, and their argument can be pulled apart pretty easily.
I think that's absolutely fair. I've seen a lot of misogyny as well. And maybe you're right that the reason there's no compelling case being given for what their end goal is and their way, the best route to it, is that there isn't really one, right? It's just a lot of people with a different goal that are sort of presenting the best case they can think of that looks like human rights, and then hoping people don't ask too many questions. Because
the old school transsexuals, their goal was to pass as well as they possibly could and just get on with their lives and have a normal job, not have to work in prostitution and get a mortgage because they weren't discriminated against at the bank, and have a partner and have a nice normal life. So the transsexuals that I shared a house with back in the 80s, and the people that I've met throughout my life, had very different goals to this crop of trans activists who have that are highly politicized but have very unclear and quite aggressive demands.
There's just so many different things going on, aren't there? Which is one thing I'm always trying to make clear in discussions with the other side or people about the other side. It's like, don't let yourself be fooled that the Jazz Jennings stereotype or whatever, or your typical harmless transsexual that you know, the super effeminate gay, whatever, like that's the only person we're talking about. But I think it really complicates the discussion, right? Because it's like you're like worrying middle-aged AGPs, they're just such a different kettle of fish to your 18-year-old non-binaries, you know, and there's all these people in the cohort. The cohort just has 10 different types of people, and they all pose different worrying or not worrying, you know, some of them are real like threats to women only spaces or feminist interests, but some of them aren't. It just makes it really messy and hard to talk about, right? Because it's like the movement, but the movement is all these different things. Yeah.
Just like our side is not all like right-wing nut jobs, and you know, and we get, you know, oh, you're Nazis, and you know, you're in bed with Breitbart and all sorts of stuff, and you know, we're not a hive mind either, you know, and I'm quite adamant about that. Most of the feminists who are in my circle are from the left originally, and you know, and we're as shocked as anyone to find right-wing publications saying, oh, can you write for us? And we're going, what, you know, you know, can we interview you about this? Oh, I don't want my friends and family to see me talking to you, you know. But they're the only ones who are willing to do it, because our traditional allies on the left won't have a bar of us.
Yeah. I see it a lot when I post on the Coalition for Biological Reality, the public page. Whenever I link something from Fox News, once another admin linked something from Breitbart News, and immediately in the comments is, oh, I hate having to see this from right-wing media outlets, blah, blah, blah. Actually, Holly, just going back, I wanted to say, with your OG magazine article, I got an archived copy and just pasted the whole text onto the Coalition's page. And in the comments, there were, I think, 2 or 3 people saying, I disagree. We don't need to put and non-binary and trans men at the end of you know, they disagreed with your use of that language, and I thought it was like, it's a compromise, you know. Yeah
That's the thing. I mean, it's going to be almost impossible to win the fight for non-inclusive language. Like, and this is just, people just love inclusion, right? It's just a happy buzzword. Never, it's that you want your children to be included in the playground, and you want to really come out as the anti-inclusion group. Like, so in terms of what I believe, of course, women covers it, right? Like, that women means female, that covers it. But in terms of like what would be strategic to not lose women-centered language and risk going back to the gender neutral, which then just is the default male, offer up a compromise. So but I guess it's hard to, you know, you have a certain number of words and you're making a point in a kind of policy / practitioner venue, you just make the case you make, right? It's, you don't get the space to be like, well, as a terms of my principles and as a you know, like, ideally I would want this as a radical feminist, but I know I'm not going to get it, so therefore it's the same stuff with pronouns, right? Like, it's this big thing across our movement that there's a lot of disagreement about whether and when to use these things. And I can see both arguments, right? That like you sometimes want to be able to get your point across without getting all the fence sitters furious in advance because they feel that you're being disrespectful. So like, you sometimes just I don't want to do that. I want to use language in a sex-based way, but I probably can't achieve all my purposes if I do that all the time. Right?
Even I know Graham Linehan and Helen Staniland and Artie Morty, they cop a lot of flack for sometimes using Debbie Hayton's preferred pronouns, for example. But I really think we need transgender people speaking out on these issues, who are offended by what's being done in their name. And we need to find a way to work with them, I think.
No, it's absolutely right. I don't know. I think I'm really inconsistent on this issue, because it's like if someone's an abstraction to me, if I don't know them,
Yeah.
and especially if they've done anything which I think is like harmful to women's interests, you know, these are usually men, and I usually call them he.
Morgaine Ogre.
Exactly. And I feel no compunction about that. But I wouldn't do it to a friend, right? Ever. And then that tells you something, right? And then actually I gave a talk recently, and I was pushed on this in the question time. I had used sex-based pronouns throughout the paper, and the paper was read by the audience in advance. We jumped straight into discussion, and it became clear that quite a few people in the audience had become like upset about this, right? It was describing someone, and then a trans woman, and then saying he, and they just thought it was really unnecessary. And the one person in the audience made this interesting case, like if I was in a workplace and I was the boss and I had a trans woman employee and I kept consistently referring to her as he, that was the example, would I think that that counts as workplace discrimination? And then I was kind of forced to admit that I would think that it was, right? Because this person would sort of feel harangued by me, their boss, in this way that they're like uncomfortable at work. And then I think that tells me something as well, right? About like, okay, so there's at least certain contexts where it's quite important to do that. And then it might be other contexts where it's strategic to do that. And then maybe you just do what you want in some venues like where you're speaking freely, and then don't do it in other venues where it won't play well, or I don't know.
There was one story I heard where it was a Christian-based funeral home in the US somewhere, and one of the funeral directors, who was an employee, and I think it was a family-run company. So they had this employee, and he transitioned to appear as a female, changed his name and everything, and still wanted to be there helping direct funerals.
Yeah.
And the owners were just like, no, this isn't going to work out. You know, our clients are Christian people, right-leaning, and so they fired him.
Yeah.
And he took them to an employment tribunal and got a payout for unfair dismissal.
Is
So
that Amy Stevens case in the US?
Yeah.
Or is there something else?
The bar of trans is so low though, because he didn't look
remember.
like a woman. The guy didn't look like a woman at all. And that's the other challenge. If someone looks like a man in a dress and he's expecting you to call him a woman, it's hard. You wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, well, and it's hard for, I can see how an employer might think, oh, at a sensitive place like a funeral parlor, it just adds another layer of difficulty for everyone involved in a time we're wanting to sort of spare people of that, right?
That's it.
Yeah, it's not, for me it's not obvious. Like I think I definitely go between being quite hardline on this, like that's my hill I want to die on, like I'm never calling a man a woman, you know. And then other times, because like anytime I try to run that argument with any colleague, any friend, anyone who's not in the Radfem groups, they're always just like, oh my God, it's just a pronoun, get over it. Like they have no patience for it. And I'm always like, but language matters and language will change the ideology. It's just like, shut up. No, it won't. Just be polite with, you know. So the fact that people have so little patience for the argument and just see it as unkind, it definitely like knocks my faith that really matters, even though I still a little bit think it does, though. It does really matter.
It does. There was a kid who was missing, a 17-year-old kid who identified as trans, and he was like 6 foot something, and the police put out a missing persons thing and used female pronouns. And I'm like, it's a bloke. And the young bloke comes onto the page and goes, how dare you misgender me? And I said, well, you know, and I thought,
wanting you to get found by the police, like you want
it's like it was just so counterproductive to find this person, because anyone who saw him in the street would go, this is a male, and he may be wearing feminine clothes or have makeup on, but he's still undeniably a male. So when you point that out to people, they go, oh, in that circumstance, the pronouns, you know, and it's all so circumstantial, and it's like,
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about they, them?
Oh,
Well,
no.
at least that's not giving anything away, right? Like I find that irritating sometimes, but I don't feel compromised. Same with trans men. I don't give a shit calling a female person he. Nothing's at stake. I don't care at all. Anyone wants to be a man, welcome along. Like, because that's not my. I know gay men might be angry about that, and maybe some men will say, "Oh, like privacy." I've had these fights, before pre-banning from Twitter. I don't care about either of those. I just care about being forced to call. And really, it's the middle-aged man, fully socialized male, usually had a family, and really looks like there's something got a sexualized view of women or just sexist stereotypes of women being projected out. And I have to call him she. That just like,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
So for me, that's the only battle. Like, yeah, what do you guys do? You care about the other?
For me, non-binary, I just can't get behind it. I think for males that are identifying as non-binary, it's sort of a cover for wanting to cross-dress, I think. And for females that are identifying as non-binary, I just see it as a total cop-out and an attempt to escape womanhood and everything that comes with that in our culture. So I just think they're nonsense and they're made up, and it feels very unnatural using it in a sentence. And an interesting one that maybe you can weigh in on, Holly. I don't know if you saw Jessica Hoyle's video. She got sort of accosted in a Target store yesterday, I think it was, or the day before.
No, I didn't.
She was wearing her LGB Tasmania cap and jumper, and the woman that had a go at her had a they them badge on, and she was an employee of Target. And Jess started saying stuff about, I'm a lesbian woman, blah blah blah, and this they them woman, a person, comes back and says, I'm gay too, so can you be a they them and still be a lesbian?
Yeah, well, that's actually I'm finding that interesting at the moment too, because I'm back on the dating app, and the dating app's called
don't
Her.
do it.
It's like, it's so disheartening. It's like men every 5 swipes, right? And you just want to kill yourself. But anyway, one thing, like anthropologically, it's kind of interesting to see where the queer community is at right now. And that shows up a lot. Like there'll be a sexual identity declared that's completely incompatible with the gender identity by the lights of their ideology. So people will say non-binary, they, them, gender fluid, lesbian.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Like, at least be consistent and just say you're pansexual anytime you use that stupid stuff. But they don't. They'll put all the words, sort of be like lesbian, gay, queer, something. So it's a string. So people are not very consistent about that stuff, or maybe because the labels like lesbian have been appropriated, anyone feels like they can use them and they don't really mean anything, or they mean like, I like women identities, whatever. So then, the they thems, they're like women identities. So they are lesbians.
Bizarro. Even asexual is now expanded to mean, I like sex sometimes but not all the time. I've got to be in the mood.
Who likes it all the time and doesn't have to be in the mood? Like, what the hell?
Mental.
Yeah, great.
We better wrap it up soon, Holly. Was there anything else you wanted to tell us about?
Oh no, just swinging by to say hi.
Cheers. Good to see you.
Keep up your great work, Holly.
Thank you.
Keep writing. Okay. That was good. That was good. A very casual chat, that one.
Yes. Holly's awesome. I'm a bit uncomfortable today, folks. Look, if without Holly, I don't think we'd have a gender critical movement here in Melbourne. Like, she is the one who just started it all. A lot of my in real life friends I actually met at an event that she organised a couple of years ago at Melbourne Uni that they tried to cancel but failed. And people were coming up to me going, oh, I know you from Facebook. And I was like, why? What have I done? And I met people that night who I now consider my closest friends. So I'm quite indebted to Holly for having the guts to arrange an in real life meetup of like-minded people. It was great. I met some politicians that night too that were useful for lobbying, and no, it was really good.
Was that the Vic Women's Guild event?
Yeah.
I'll post.
I didn't know a soul. It just rocked up.
Good on you. Good on you.
Yeah, met heaps of people that night.
That was in the lead up to Self ID here in Victoria. I'll find the videos and post them in the description so everyone can have a look. Bronwyn Winter was there, wasn't she?
Yeah, I was a bit intimidated, as I am when Bronwyn talks.
Yeah.
Well, so quiet last week. She's so smart. Yeah, but no, that Bronwyn was the speaker. Holly, it was a really good event. Yeah, and it was so scary because we knew Self ID was going to go through, and there was absolutely nothing we could do about it.
Yeah.
And
I was blissfully unaware up until last year. And I think that's true of so many women and men in Victoria, just have no idea that this is even going on.
Yeah. Well, since we've been out of lockdown, or mostly out of lockdown, I've certainly seen far more trans identified people than I have ever before, and the they them pins are everywhere, and a lot of androgynous looking women and effeminate looking men, mostly young people. But I have and I've always had a bit of a trans star because I've been hanging around the scene since I was a teenager, so all the people that are a little bit out of the ordinary, I usually find them in my corner. And so I've never seen this amount of trans identified people, and I haven't seen them in places where I felt entirely comfortable, and that's what worries me. It'd be fine if they were staying out of our toilets and out of our sex specific services, but they're not, unfortunately.
Yeah. We should wrap it up soon, but just quickly, J.K. Rowling has been in the news again.
Yes.
I actually liked Graham Linehan's take on it. He said something along the lines of, she's lured all these trans activists into defending rapists,
Yeah. Well, that's essentially what she's done. It was, a sea of trans activists and just blokes, the usual ones that defend trans women or women are just blokey incels of the left. And they were all defending, the pronouns of rapists. It's like, what sort of a person does that? The same guys are like, oh, me too, and I respect women's boundaries. Oh yeah, that rapist is a woman.
And if you were a woman who had been assaulted, raped by a trans woman, like how traumatizing, re-traumatizing all over again to have to call him she, her.
Well, I'm in a secret group with someone who has a recent ex who broke a domestic violence order. And that woman is traumatized because that person is appearing in the media as a she. Now, he committed the crimes against her less than 2 years ago as a male, and now he's everywhere as a female. He doesn't look very much like a female, but is celebrated in the media as being one. And I have actually been in a secret Facebook group where she spoke about her trauma. And I think it's actually on Holly's website, where she told the story of how it feels for her to be, to witness this perpetrator being celebrated for being just like her.
Oh, you'll have to send me those links.
Yeah, and Holly's website's No Conflict, they said.
Yeah, .org. Yeah. Chuck that in the description as well. All right, well, what are we at? We're at the 19th of December.
Wow.
I'm just bringing up my calendar. Will we do another one on Christmas Eve? We'll do a Christmas.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Yeah, let's do it. I don't drink, but you can have a few ales and put the Santa hats on. That'd be cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
That I'm going to Queensland, so I may come from a beach somewhere. So that'll be good.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, good to
Cool,
see you,
cool.
Stassja. Thank you.
You too. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll
ya.
see you next
Bye.
week. Bye.
Bye.